Long ago in a not so distant Huntsville, I, Gilbert, decided to actually do something like this, which is today's topic. We're talking about one of the greatest TV shows, along with Avatar, to ever exist. I think, wouldn't you agree, Seuss?
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. So if you couldn't tell by the intro that I tried doing, but I couldn't because I didn't want to disrespect Mako in that way. We're talking about Samurai Jack, which is one of my favorite shows growing up as a kid, created by Gendy Burnasky. You'll look him up, guys, at this point. But so he did a lot of other great shows on Cartoon Network. But it's an interesting show. It starred Phil Lamar, who actually many years ago, Phil Lamar is such a great guy. If y'all don't know who Phil Lamar is, I feel what's the word I'm looking for? Offended. He's such a great voice actor. But if I have to, if you grew up with the Jon Stewart Green Lantern, he was the voice of Jon Stewart in Justice League, as well as Static Shock. And he voices our main character, Mr. Samurai Jack. Just for the record, Jack is not his real name. His real name is never given any time throughout the show. And we'll explain why he's called Jack. But the great Phil Lamar voices Samurai Jack. But to a legend, the great Mako Ewamatsu voices the villain of the entire series. I drew a blank there for a second, but what I mean is not the entire series, because first of all, it's a disrespect to me if y'all don't know Mako. Like, if you're a fan of Avatar, The Last Airbender, and y'all don't know who Mako is, then you're truly not an Avatar, The Last Airbender fan, because Mako, we all know, is the voice of Iroh, or was the voice of Iroh. And the reason why I was drawing a blank there when it came to like when I was trying to say Mako and Aku is because, as we know the story, Mako died before he could ever finish doing The Last Airbender, which is when they decided to get Greg Baldwin to continue his legacy as Aku. Well, the same thing is in this case here. After season 4, I don't know when season 4 actually ended, but after season 4, Mako would eventually pass away in 2006. Of course, he was still working with Avatar at the time. So just like with Uncle Iroh, Jenny Baranosky, he got Greg to come back. And Greg Baldwin, I've never met him. He's one of those guys where I hope to meet one day. He's one of those guys that knows like he's not Mako, but the fans, they know that. But it's more like they respect Greg for carrying on Mako's legacy, because without him, I mean, Iroh or Aku wouldn't even exist anymore. I feel like you were about to say just what I was about to say too. But anyway, it's a great show. How I was talking to a sister about a month ago when we were trying to figure out how we're going to tackle this, or like the night we were okay. So we thought about this the night we did our Interstellar episode. We were trying to think of us how we're going to tackle this, because it's not like any other show where like each season has its own kind of like subplot to where we could talk about like, so this is what season 1 does, season 2, season 3. The only season that does that is the final season, which is season 5. But how I figure we could break this down is by timeline. And by that, okay, so there's a prequel episode, or there are actually a couple of prequel episodes to this series, but there is a prequel episode that kind of explains the birth of Aku, as well as like why Jack's father, Samurai Jack, who's the emperor, why he's always protective of the kingdom, and why he's always saying like, I'm preparing for if Aku should ever come back. Well, there's an episode that's dedicated to like what happened before Jack was ever born, actually around the time too, because here's how it goes down. So just like in any mythology or any lore, there's always the birth of good, but then there's always the birth of evil. Evil was there. It's not like when we talk about Genesis, usually, because Genesis always says in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and evil wasn't created until some people believe that between the fifth and the sixth day, maybe earlier than that, like we've once said that like time in heaven and time on earth are completely different. But to the point, there was evil, and this evil stretched across the universe. There were 3 deities, I would say. There was Odin, the forefather of Norse mythology. Rama, I think it's like an Indian deity, and I forgot the third one. Do you remember the third one? Because there was
Uh,
Thor. What?
you said there was Thor,
Rama.
Odin. Oh, sorry, not Odin. Wait, was it Odin?
Yeah, it was Odin.
Yeah, Odin, and then I'm not gonna say Vishnu, but
What? Okay, hold on. So I think it was. Hold on.
I think it was Hindu.
Yeah, I think it was called Rama. That's thought I had. I think I wrote it down too, and I forgot the. Okay, here it is. Yeah, it's Odin Ra from Egypt and Rama, the Hindu god. But to the story, we don't know if like all mythologies are together or not. We just know that these 3 were there, and they were trying to stop this evil. Well, this evil makes its way to Earth and it stayed there. It's like the story of It. If y'all ever read It or know the story, it crash landed on Earth and it didn't wake up till about 1 billion years later. Same thing with Aku, but the difference is Aku, I believe, was always awake. Like he was just stuck in the crater that he built when he landed on Earth. But how Aku survived for, I don't know, 1 billion years was because whatever crossed its path, whatever like got stuck in this pit of the liquid that Aku's made of, he would consume it. And that's how he survived for millenniums, you know? So it wasn't until like Aku's evil or whatever would start expanding and becoming like a dark forest, the emperor decided to or kill whatever evil is growing in that forest. Him and his I guess his horsemen or his soldiers, whatever, they were riding into the forest and only the emperor survived. He had this like potion or whatever that were like if you dip the arrow and plunge it into the core of where the evil is coming from, the evil will be vanquished. However, whatever this potion was, it actually is what released Aku. In doing so, Aku traps the emperor and goes after the kingdom in Japan. And I think from what I remember, a Valkyrie brought the emperor to see them. Rama and Odin said that because of like his purity and his good spirit, they forged a magic sword, and the sword comes into play throughout the entire series. They forged a sword that can, from his wisdom, from his goodness, from his purity, it's the only thing that can kill Aku. And when the emperor fought Aku again, it didn't really kill Aku. It's more like he plunged him back into the pit that Aku came from. And around that time, the emperor's wife was pregnant and was about to give birth to their son. In that moment, that's when, after the emperor plunged Aku back to the pit where he came from, the emperor's wife gave birth to their son, who was our protagonist, Samurai Jack. Now, that story actually takes place in season 3. Like I said, this was like a prequel episode. We get some of those because it kind of helped. I'm just going to say, I'm glad that Jenny Taranovsky created that episode because it's kind of making things easier to how to like explain this a lot more. But the emperor knew that like the Aku could come back anytime. He didn't know whether or not Aku was truly dead or not, but he said that he's been waiting patiently. So to do this, just in case the emperor dies or is kidnapped or just rendered helpless, he has this, oh man, I don't even know what you call it, alliance, I guess you would say, of people from different cultures. So he has like connections to like Egypt, Africa, Greece, Rome, maybe, I believe, or Italy. Actually, I don't even remember if Rome was still Rome at that time, because this was like feudal Japan, so it was probably just Italy. But he has like people all over the place to like say like, hey, in case this happens, I want you to train my son how to fight, how to defend himself, how to do all these things. And it just happens to that way. Like when Jack was, I believe, 8 or 10 years old, that's when Aku came back because of an eclipse and took the emperor as hostage, and everything plays forward. It went out just as what the emperor would probably think it would have. So Jack had to learn how to fight. He was raised by different people of different cultures. It just depends on how long he's been training with these different folks. There's a whole episode, and I don't remember which season because I'm currently binge watching it. I haven't binge watched it in a while, ever since Asus actually gave me. Asus was the one of the guys that gave me the set. So first of all, thank you for that. But it's also on Max if you have Max, if you ever want to see it.
I will
Right?
say this. I don't know how long it's going to be there though, because I mean, there's no. I don't think there's a war going on of some sort, like an internal war happening with Max and this Warner Brothers Animation. What used to be what Cartoon Network used to be, because now Cartoon Network has essentially been killed or disbanded and has been merged with Warner Brothers Animation. So I don't know if you've seen it or you actually looked at Max for a while, but a lot of the old classics, like Ed and Eddie, K&D, Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Lab, which was, one of Gendy's other hits, they disappeared. Like they're slowly being removed. So I don't know how long until Samurai Jack leaves the actual channel. It's probably still there, hopefully, but at this point, I could just for viewers, like who knows when if it's gonna be taken down soon. So if you guys are really wanting to check out this show, take a look at it, or it disappears or something.
But yeah, I have the complete set, so I'm good. I'm covered. Actually, it still is on Max because there are times where I want to watch it downstairs, but we don't have like a DVD player in my living room, so it might as well just put it on Max. That's how I know it's still on Max. But then also, like, I was living at the camp that I've worked at, and there was no way to bring like the PlayStation or any DVD player per se. So I brought it, and I have Max on my TV. So you can't take Samurai Jack away from me no matter what. But yeah, this. I'm clearly addicted to this show. I love this show. But like we said, I don't remember which season. I don't know if you remember, or it was when Jack was training in Africa, because we know it's briefly shown in the first episode. But it's almost like how history plays out, if you guys know what I mean. I believe like 20 years has passed and Jack is now grown up. He's learned how to fight. He's learned how to defend himself. Now it's time to take his place. His mother, who's been hiding all along, gives him the sword as well as a gi. If you guys never heard of what a gi is pretty much like the robe or like the things that they wear, like Karate Kid or Cobra Kai, almost what they wear. So, I mean, Jack comes, he frees his father, as well as the millions of others who have been enslaved by Aku. However, Aku is still alive. And Jack's father warns him that the sword isn't really what's gonna destroy Aku, it's the wisdom. It's because remember, the sword is made out of one's pure goodness. That's something that I love about the show, is that Jack keeps that goodness within him. He doesn't like put others before him, because he's always on a mission. Sometimes he puts, or really all the time, he puts everybody else before his mission, which is why, like, that sword, how he uses that sword almost. I couldn't think of a word for it. But when Jack finally goes up against Aku, he pretty much had the upper hand. He was about to vanquish Aku. But I always love this because that's how we get into the show now, where Aku says, like, you have defeated me in the past, samurai, but you will not defeat me in the future. And Jack just says, there is no future for you, Aku. And then Aku says, I disagree, and does something where he screeches, and then like these beams or whatever that comes out of his mouth, and it transports Jack into the future. And at that moment, that's also how, like, every episode up until the 5th season, where Aku narrates like what happened and why we're here. So every episode you watch is about Aku saying like how he came and then now he brought evil, but then Jack came to stop him, and he talks about how he sent Jack into the future. Now Jack's in the future, and it's like a fish out of water situation. If you just want to break down, I guess, the first episode for a bit.
Yeah. So as far as we know, he gets sent into the future, and at this point, like you had mentioned, Jack has no idea where he is, and he has no idea where his home is. I mean, if that is his home, I mean, it's almost like it's completely unrecognizable. It just has flying cars, and not only of that nature, but like the fact that that technology has surpassed whatever he has in terms of like his own weaponry and his own social cues. Now he's even flabbergasted at this point to meet people, like, say, on the street, and they're like aliens or animals, and these animals can talk. So at some point he ends up meeting a group of dogs, at least at a bar. And oh, by the way, for a cartoon that's made for kids, I mean, the fact that they decided to literally film a pivotal scene in a bar where you could actually see, like, it's assumed to be prostitutes dancing in a tube, like, think Blade Runner kind of thing. It's just wild.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's constantly in here too. It's like a lot of episodes. Every time he wants to relax, and he's in somewhat of a bar, almost like the space cantina from Star Wars, if you think about it. Yeah, sorry,
yes.
didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, no, that's fine. And so he meets three dogs, and these dogs, they're basically asking him, because they notice how he's able to destroy, like, some, I guess, I don't remember what it was, but I think he was like destroying some robots, like Aku's henchmen, like these little beetles, these huge beetle looking things. And well, one of the dogs notices that and says, well, maybe he's the key to saving our kind. So he basically, like, they meet, they talk about it. Little did they know, there's actually somebody, at least a worker in the bar, that overhears this. And as it turns out, she actually has intel with Aku. So she works for him. So later on, that's how Aku knows that Samurai Jack has returned. Because remember, he sent him in the future. He just doesn't know what point in time. And now that he's been told that the Samurai Warrior has returned, he's freaking out because he's like, okay, he's supposed to come here. But at the same time, he's like, okay, it's the future. What can he do? Like, we have better ways of defeating a samurai from, like, feudal Japan. So anyway, the point is that Jack goes with the dogs, and they go to this, I guess, to their colony, if you want to call it that, or city. Probably used to be a real good city, but it's one of the only factions. I want to call it faction instead. Now it's like a faction. It's basically the dogs are doing their best to simply say, we don't want anything to do with Aku's stuff because look at what he's doing. These are the evil that he is brought upon. So as you can see in the bars and stuff like that in the beginning, it seems like there's no evil to be seen, but it's always within the shadows. Like that's just how evil works, right? So that's how Aku does his things. So anyway, point is you're seeing it there as it is, and Jack is like doing his best to prepare and actually prepare the dogs. Okay, so what can you dogs actually do? And well, they have nothing essentially. They it's just them. So he teaches them how to make their own kind of weapons or to prepare them for the eventual battle that they're going to ensue. And of course, that takes place in like the third episode. So it's amazing, like how Gilbert was mentioning it. It really feels like that whole callback to like Star Wars and all the Space Cantinas things. Those kinds of stories were obviously influenced by Westerns. So the way I see it, I not only see it as like a callback to Star Wars or anything like of that nature, but I also see it more as like Jack barely talks throughout this whole franchise, right? So he's essentially the samurai version of Yojimbo. Or in this case, for other people who have not seen that, that's a Akira Kurosawa film. He's basically the samurai with no name to a lot of these people that he talks to. I mean, they know his name, but he's like that moniker. Like he barely talks, but you know stuff's gonna go down when he's in like the picture. So, in short, that's as much as the first 3 episodes of the show go. Now, Aku's aware that Jack is back, and Jack's going to do whatever he can to basically end his reign of terror.
Yeah, in case, like, I know some people might have heard this earlier, and people are like, wait, so is his name really Jack or not? As I mentioned earlier, his name's not really Jack. It's just that when he got transported into the future, Jack was like, I guess it's slang, like the future kids were saying. I don't know how distant into the future. But I do want to do an episode one day. I even thought of a name for it. It's called Now It's in the Past, how like you get like movies that take place in the future, like Blade Runner or Back to the Future, but all the years are already past and we're still not living in those times. That's why I want to call it Now It's in the Past, because it used to be in the future when the movie came out. Now it's no longer. But to my point, yeah, like when he showed up, all these kids were just saying like, man, Jack can do this, Jack can do that. That's Jack, Jack, Jack. So he just took in that name. However, I was watching this, I don't remember if it was like a podcast interview or somebody just talking, or this guy was saying like Jack is probably used to adopting names because like Jack took on a different persona in a prequel episode where he was training in Africa. He took on a different name. So I think that's something he's used to. I think like he takes on a different name every time he goes from one country to train to the next country to train. That was just more of a theory or an idea. I don't think it's actually true, but we never know what his true name is. All we know is that he's the son of an emperor. He's a samurai. And that's pretty much it. We don't even know who the emperor's name is. Like pretty much every character except Ashi. Well, I'll mention her right now. Ashi and Aku. Ashi's a character we get into the 5th season. And obviously Aku. They're the only character as far as I know, or as far as I can recollect, that are their actual names, because we are going to talk about the characters in a bit, because like I said, it's kind of hard to like break down this series when it's like every episode is its own plot per se. It's not like if we were trying to break down Avatar, which someday I'll probably do, where like book 1 is water, Aang's trying to figure out life now that he's the Avatar and he's the last airbender and he's trying to learn water bending. And then book 2, now he's trying to search for Appa, he meets Toph and he's learning earthbending. And then book 3, Aang's now trying to fight the Fire Lord. He tried so with Sozin's Comet. Then Zuko becomes a good guy. And then Aang defeats the Fire Lord. There you go. Just did our whole Avatar episode without having to do it. I'm just kidding. I might actually do it. But like I said, it's not like that show, because every episode has its own plot. And it's like, I wish I can like break down every plot of every episode, but I would get myself lost. And I know some of y'all will. So when we get back from break, I have an idea. It'll be an idea. Just bear with me. So I'm about to pause for a second. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Like I said, we're not going to break down the plots of almost every episode as much as I would love to. What I told Asu, so like when we came up with the idea was for this little like part of the episode, I would say what I want to do is focus on some of the side characters of this series because they do come back for the fifth and final season. Even some side characters that we don't see in the fifth season that only made one appearance, but they still kind of like had an impact on the show, which is pretty much a lot of characters. Obviously, let's just get the big one out of the way. Scotsman, I think one of the greatest side characters to ever exist. Scotsman is played by Phil Lamar's good friend from the Futurama days, and if y'all don't remember, Joe was the guy who played Bender in Futurama. He's a really good actor, voice actor. The character of Scotsman is pretty much like the stereotypical way or version of Scotsman. Like he has like a thick Scottish accent, but like super thick. I mean, like sometimes you can barely understand him. He's like what 6'5". He plays bagpipes, which is pretty much how he's introduced to Jack, by the way. He meets Jack, and just like Jack, he's on the run from Aku. Even though at the end of the series, Aku says he has no recollection of the Scotsman. And the Scotsman also has a sword of his own. He has a magic sword that's made out, I believe, Celtic runes, or has a form of Celtic magic. He's it's pretty much like the same way as Jack's sword is. And Jack's sword obviously came from like the inner wisdom of his father and built by the gods, whichever mystical gods there were. But he's a recurring character. I mean, we meet him once in the first season, and we meet him again, I think, in every season, if I'm not mistaken. Because like the first episode is pretty much like him and Jack meet on a bridge, and they have like this scuffle because the bridge is small, it's narrow, and one's trying to go one way and one's trying to go the other way. And they're just trying to like say like, look, I'm just trying to go this way and I'm trying to go the other way. But somebody has to step back. That's pretty much how the argument went. And then that's when they realized that these bounty hunters come, and the Scotsman reveals, by the way, like I said, we don't know any other of these characters' names. The Scotsman is just the Scotsman. But the Scotsman said, hey, Aku also has a price on my head. And they just learn to work together, and they eventually become friends. When he comes back, we're all introduced to his wife. And his wife, how do I put this without upsetting people? Rasputia, I guess I could put it like that. You can watch the show for yourself. But let's put it this way. Her and the Scotsman produce, I don't know how many daughters. Like, I don't know.
But once you see season 5, you're like, dang, like how many? How they're all built.
Oh,
Crazy.
yeah. They're all built. I think they're all taller than him, too. I mean, the Scotsman's wife is also a lot taller than him. And like I don't know, she hulks out or whatever anytime you mention her weight. Jack didn't even mean to make fun of her weight at the end of an episode. They're trying to get out this tunnel, and he says, like, we got to go to a different direction. And the Scotsman's like, why? He says, well, this doorway is very narrow, and your wife is. He didn't even get a chance to finish, by the way. He knew, like, his Scotsman's wife knew where that conversation was going, and Scotsman just yells Jack to run, and then it just ends with like the Scotsman's wife chasing Jack. And then we meet. I think another episode we meet him again. It's like Jack forgets who he is. He lost his memory, and the Scotsman's trying to help him regain the memory. Apparently, like Jack was caught up with sirens, and that's why he kind of lost his memory and his sword. But no, man, the Scotsman's he's a great character. He's a funny character. I don't want to go into the fifth season because I kind of want to say that for when we talk about the fifth season. But even though, yes, we mentioned that they produce like 30 daughters, just girls, and they're all built. Like we said, they're built. They're like 6'5", 6'7". No, it's interesting, and obviously Joe Maggiano does an incredible job as a Scotsman. I think that and Bender obviously are his most famous roles. The third one being the Joker, I guess, because he voiced the Joker in Under the Red Hood.
For a lot of fans, at least the newer generation of cartoon viewers, he is memorable in this community, at least in this time now, for Jake, or the dog in Adventure Time.
Oh, yeah, Jake. Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, he does a lot of great voices. Another set of characters I do want to talk about, and it's literally like the first episode of the second season. I don't know like I said, they don't really have names for these characters. I call them, and I'm pretty sure everybody else calls them the Jump Good Monkeys, along with this human character that's like, their version of Tarzan, but not, built. Let's put it like that. Like Jack just sees these monkeys and him, and he thinks they fly, and they're like, "No, jump good." And he's like amazed at how high they can jump. And just like any other like people that he's run into, he's always putting his humanity first before anything else. This group of monkeys are terrorized by another group of apes. I guess they constantly move to get away from those apes, but those apes will always find them and they'll always trash their place, take their food, and leave until they keep following them all over again. Well, Jack says, like, hey, I don't want y'all to be dealing with this anymore, so I will teach you guys how to fight. And in return, the monkeys taught him how to jump good. And as far as I can remember, this is, I think, the only time where a group that Jack helped learn, like teach to fight or protect, defended themselves. Like Jack heard the conversation, he was about to go help, but he saw how like all the monkeys defended themselves from the apes, and he was just impressed by like how well they defended themselves. He didn't have to do anything. As far as I know, I think that's the only time that's ever happened. And he was about to fight Aku again, and as soon as like Aku has the time portal, because that's what Jack wants to do. He wants to go back to the past. That's literally the theme of the show. Got to go back to the past, Samurai Jack. And when Aku has like the time portal in his hands, and he thinks like Jack's not gonna do anything, Jack jumps and he's like, "Oh, you can fly," and Jack's like, "No, jump good." And then it just cuts from there. But obviously, we know he didn't get a chance to go back. Aku's a very tricky person. Like there was an episode where he pretended to be a woman. Gosh, it's hard saying that nowadays. But just to fool Jack, just to trick him, just to take away like his humanity and stuff like that. But obviously, Jack is always trained to never lose your humanity, never lose who you are.
Oh, real quick before you move on, I without bringing up anything. Now you watch the whole show. That one episode that you just talked about of how Aku was trying to seduce him by being a woman. That's great foreshadowing. I just realized that.
I see what you mean now. Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think. Woolies were another character that were introduced to the first season. They were a peaceful tribe. Most of these folks that Jack runs into are peaceful tribes, even though they do fight, but they're a peaceful tribe, not pacifist. If you guys are wondering what's the difference, a pacifist will not fight no matter what. So they will literally die not raising a hand. A peaceful tribe will only fight if it's necessary. And obviously, those were necessary things. They were enslaved. Woolies? Woolies? Yeah. Like woolly mammoths or Wookiees, I guess you could say, like Samurai Jack's version of Wookiees. I mean, they were also enslaved from an alien tribe, and Jack helped them out. There are so many people that Jack helped. Like, I remember the one that stood out to me the most, and they do come back for the final season, were these group of teenagers that were seduced by this music. All right.
Yes.
Is that where you're going with too?
Yeah, that's one of the most memorable episodes ever.
I mean, I can let you talk about it if you want to.
I mean, as far as I can tell, just fill in the gaps for me. I know you were watching it recently, so your memory is more memorable at this point. But as far as I remember, Jack is on his never-ending quest. He goes into a village, and that village, well, basically, he notices there's no kids around, and so he's kind of like basically all the parents at this point are telling him our kids are gone. They always get taken at night by something. They just don't know what it is. So as he stays in that village for the time being, he witnesses it firsthand as to what's happening. So it seems like all the children, all the teenagers, actually get like tranced or entranced by a music, and it's basically like a rave party. So they all go to this one area, and it looks like a stage, and like there's this DJ. He's the one that essentially plays the music that entrances all these teens to just to pretty much have the party of their lives. But in essence, I think they use that as a way to kind of get them to do stuff like crime, right? I'm not really sure. So as they're in trance, they're undergoing all the stuff for crime or doing stuff for essentially Aku, or at least for the DJ, because that DJ works for Aku. But it's not only about it's like a simple plot, but it's really the music that stands out the whole time. It really like Jack has to go incognito to this, so he dresses up like the teens, and so he's just chilling, and he's trying to find out what's happening. But then all the teens are essentially focused on him at one point, and so he has to basically, because they're like, you clearly are not a teen, you're old. So they want to see what kind of moves he's got. So it's pretty funny when he's able to like rile up the rest of the teens to help break their trance, if that's If I think that's probably the gist of the story.
Okay, here it goes. All right. So that kind of takes the story of like almost like the Pied Piper, almost, the enchanted music that draws the kids at the end of the story. You could think of it like modern times almost, how like young kids, like not even teenagers, I'm talking about like kids under 13, though some say teenagers start at 14. I disagree on that part. But I'm saying like kids younger than 13 are easily entranced by music to make them just say vulgar things, make them act stupid, make them do everything. So I think you can relate that to a lot of modern times, especially now, really more recent now. Like if a kid's not raised well, and I've seen that happen, they have no respect for anybody, and most of the time it's just the music that they listen to. I don't want to put too much out there, but that's just as far as I'm going to go into because I don't want to go off topic. But yeah, you could say you could relate that to real life nowadays. One I just finished rewatching. It's in the second season. These characters, they don't come back for any other episode. The title of the episode is something that confuses fans. It's called Jack and the Five Hunters, but there's actually four hunters. So I don't know what really happened. Either somebody forgot to put in a character or somebody forgot to change the title when it was released. But it's called Jack. It's technically Jack and the Four Hunters or Jack and the Four Emakandis. So basically, like these lion creatures called the Emakandis, their life is just to hunt, not hunt to kill or hunt to eat. They hunt as a sport. And for people who can relate to me, I love to fish. Most of the time, we don't like to keep the fish that we bring in unless we want to do a catch and cook. But even then, if there's a fish that we've been wrestling for like a long time, it's still on the hook. So like say like if people who've caught a wild tuna and it took hours and hours to reel in that tuna because that tuna is literally fighting with all its strength. And when you bring it in and you think like, dude, this is like a worthy fight that I can't keep this thing. I want to hold on to the memory. And you decide to let the tuna go. That's what the Emakandis are. Now, originally, their goal was to hunt and trap Jack to bring to Aku. And it was pretty easy in the beginning, but that was because like they caught Jack by surprise. I had to rephrase that because I said something that's going to get people a little bit confused. They caught him by surprise. And they were like, wow, this was the waste of nothing. Let's just take him to Aku. As soon as Jack hears Aku, he's like, nope. And throughout the entire episode, they just hunt him down to the point where they wore him out. And, well, not really wore him out. I think they, what's the word? Drugged him, I guess you could say. They drugged him. He's passed out. And Aku's like, good, you caught him. Now bring him to me. The hunters were like, no. Like, he was a worthy hunt. Like, he gave us, like, the thrill of hunting. He should be set free. And that's exactly what they do. I wish they brought them back, but it would have been like good to see them in the final season. Other great episodes are like Jack and the Three Archers, which IGN says that's like the top or like the number one episode, which is a very interesting episode. I would say watch that. I don't want to give them the spoilers about that one, but they give it like Daredevil training almost. Jack and the Three Archers is a good one. And as well as the Spartan episode, which is on the second season. There's so many great episodes. Jack's touched so many people in their lives. I'm trying to think of any other good characters that either like come back in the final season. Oh wait, no, I just remember one. I was gonna go on a break and be like, the one I was thinking of, the samurai. Oh man, that's not to spoil that one. That's a character that's like, you know what? Watch the show, and you're gonna love the samurai.
Not only that, but you also can't spoil, and it's better that everybody would watch it at least once. That one episode where Jack doesn't talk the whole time, and it's really just you're seeing the episode through the viewpoint of four assassins.
That's actually a really good episode. I mean, they're all really good episodes. There are some that are a bit like I question why. Like there's one where Jack turns into a chicken, and then there's one where Jack gets his clothes stolen. Yeah, there's so many great episodes, and obviously, oh man, another good episode to me. And I know we were really talking about characters, but this one I don't know, it stuck out to me a lot. I mean, it's basically like it's a horror episode almost. It's basically like Jack is in a cemetery, and Aku just releases all these zombies. And I mean, the one that stuck out to me the most of that zombie was like he had like Nosferatu fingers, like larger than Count Orlok. The thing is about most of these characters or most of the people that Jack fights are robots. And that's mainly because like Cartoon Network was very strict on like, violence and gore and stuff like that. So anything that wasn't Adult Swim, Cartoon Network was like, you really got to tone down on it. Which I thought you were going to say something at first.
The only thing I was added, I guess you were gonna say it with me too, or mention it. At the time, it was catered toward kids. So, but that didn't excuse the animators and
Yeah.
the director from trying to do as much as they could to include things that fit for an adult audience. So even teenagers at the time were sitting here going, "Dang, that is so cool to see what looks like oil being splattered across the screen," even though that essentially is like, "Oh yeah, that's blood."
Yeah, I mean, every character, every episode is good. As I mentioned, yes, we got a couple of episodes that I question why. Yeah, I guess we'll take another break right now, and then we'll talk about the fifth season. Because the fifth season, there's actually a story that goes all throughout the entire season, and I think it has less episodes than the other four seasons have. So don't go anywhere. Season 5 of Samurai Jack. Pretty much everybody's back except, as we mentioned before, the great Mako Emamatsu, who, like we said, had unfortunately passed away. So Greg Baldwin comes back, who does a really good job, as they said, of keeping Mako's legacy alive. Every so often, when they ask him, like, hey, if it's Samurai Jack or if it's Avatar, they ask him, hey, so what character do you play? He says, oh, I'm just a Mako impersonator. But Greg does a really good job in keeping Mako's legacy alive while playing Aku. And okay, so the fifth season came out in 2017. The series was on pause, I believe, like 2004, 2005. So literally for like 12 to 13 years, Samurai Jack was in a huge hiatus. And this is where the series actually gets like bloody, like gory. Like it actually went on Adult Swim. It went from Cartoon Network to Adult Swim because those who had seen the show since the beginning were kids. And at that point, people like me and everybody else were already grown up. We were already in our 20s, like really early 20s when the fifth and final season came out. How this goes is basically like 50 years had passed and he looks young. He hasn't aged at all. It probably has to do with the fact that when he traveled through time, it might have messed with like his DNA or his molecules or something to where he just doesn't age. He looks the same. The only thing he does, he just grows a beard and that's about it. And during a fight, I believe with Aku, Jack loses his sword. Like he loses his sword and Aku destroyed all the time portals. Like every single one of them he destroyed. And he was hoping that just keeping him trapped, he would die of old age. Well, like I said, he doesn't age at all. He just lives. It's like both Jack and Aku have no purpose anymore. And the only one who ever discovered that Jack was truly vulnerable, because Aku didn't know that Jack, within the 50 years, he didn't know that Jack doesn't have his sword anymore. The only one who knew about this was a bounty hunter named Scaramouche that was portrayed by Tom Kenny. As we all know, is SpongeBob. He actually does come out a lot in the series anymore. Okay, let's put it this way. How I know is because I didn't have to look up the credits. Every time I heard a voice, I'm like, that's Tom Kenny. Tom Kenny has a very familiar voice. But Tom Kenny's main character in this season is Scaramouche, which is a robotic bounty hunter. And his goal is to tell Aku, hey, Jack does not have a sword anymore, so you could finish what you've been trying to do. And throughout that time, there was this cult, or coven, however you want to call it, that worships Aku. And the leader, all right, it's going to sound gross what I'm about to say, so let's just say it like how it is, all right? She had this cup that has Aku's like DNA or whatever, because Aku is, every time he's shaped, he has like a liquid thing per se. It's almost like the T-1000 from T2, Terminator 2. Because if you remember, the T-1000 was like liquid metal, like mercury. Well, Aku is like liquid something, all right? And this woman drinks the liquid and gives birth to how many? Like 8 kids or 8 daughters or whatever.
I think so.
Yeah. One of them is a girl named Ashi that we've mentioned early on. And their goal in life is to train and kill Samurai Jack. That was their goal. And Jack, like we said, he has no purpose anymore. The only thing he does is just still what he does, which is protect humanity. When the children of Aku were all old enough, the daughters of Aku, I gotta be specific, the daughters of Aku were old enough, they all went on the hunt to kill Samurai Jack. And Jack, obviously, he has to defend himself. During a fight, that's when Jack kills somebody for the first time. Like we say, he's never really killed people, per se, or really any being. Like, because remember, this has aliens. Like they pretty much find a way to end themselves. But hold on, you know what? That's technically false. There's one character we didn't mention. There's this rock giant that was cursed. He was like a Viking, and he told Jack that he has to die in battle in order to become human again, but to earn his way to Valkyrie, which is obviously what the early Vikings believed as their afterlife. That's technically when was the first time Jack's ever killed. But in a gruesome way, however, that was like the first time we ever saw like blood and gore because he slit somebody's throat. And even Jack was surprised because he spent like 50 years before that, he spent his time fighting robots and mechanics, you know, like that's what he's used to. That's what he thought it was. And man, social media blew up after that episode. And the episode after that, he actually kills the rest of Aku's daughters except Ashi. He tells Ashi, who is voiced by Tara Strong. By this way, pretty much you could just guess any voice actor or actress. Tara Strong is definitely up there, along with, as we've mentioned, Joe Maggiano and Mark Hamill, and of course the great Phil Lamar. But he tries to tell Ashi, look, everything you're learned, everything that you've been told is all a lie. Like you're asking to do more evil than what you think. That's pretty much like what Jack is trying to tell Ashi. And he didn't mean to leave Ashi alive. Like he thought he killed Ashi. Ashi was just trapped. And he, instead of killing her, he wanted to show her or tell her, hey, look, this is like what the life is of Aku, like him enslaving all life form per se. And during that, that's when there's an episode where we get the Scotsman back. And the Scotsman is old, he's frail, he's in a wheelchair bound, and he tried to lead a battle against Aku. Army dies, his daughters survive, and the only way to make sure he protected his daughters is doing what the Scotsman does, which is insult. The Scotsman, as well as every other people like him, including his wife, they tend to insult people. And all he just did was insult Aku to the point where Aku just sets him on fire and dies. But his spirit, because of the sword, the same kind of magic that the sword came out of, the Scotsman's spirit is alive. And somehow they'll look the same as he did when we first are introduced to the Scotsman. So that's as far as I can go with the Scotsman. But everything else, we always go back to Ashi and Jack. And then there's an episode where Jack has to figure out how to get his sword back. And man, my memory is a bit iffy. I know yours is too. But as far as I can tell, he's gone through trials to get his sword back, to the point where his sword was actually reforged. Because remember, the sword was forged from wisdom and goodness from his father. And somehow that had to be brought back in order to forge a new sword. And during Jack's trials, Ashi has to learn the truth. And she learned that like everything that she's been taught, everything that she's believed in, everything that she's been trained to do was all a lie. I think she even took down the mother that birthed her. And eventually Jack does get his sword. And now for the rest of the season, that's what it's a series, you could say. Now he's going back to his mission, stop Aku, go back in time, and just go home. That's pretty much it. That's also when Scaramouche was pretty much ahead from like the entire season. Like his robotic head literally travels from one place to the next to finally go to Aku's place. And Aku restores him. And that's when Scaramouche tells him, hey, he lost his sword about 50 years back. Or I don't even think 50 years back. I think somewhere down the line, he just lost his sword. But it's like, he lost his sword a long time ago. You just never knew. And that's when Aku was like, oh, so I could kill him already. And then when Jack and Aku see each other for the first time, that's when he realized Jack now has his sword back. He kills Scaramouche because he thought Scaramouche was lying. And then that's when Ashi realizes that she actually is the daughter of Aku and has all of Aku's powers. However, the powers control Ashi. And the only way to like help Ashi, what they believed, was to kill her. But Jack could not do that because they fell in love throughout their journey. Which to me is kind of weird if you think about it. Jack is technically like 80 something years old and Ashi is like 18 to 20. So, I mean, that's just my mindset. But Aku has finally succeeded in having Samurai Jack in his grasp. He does a broadcast. Guys, the broadcast is literally the opening of every episode since the first movie. I mean, not from the first movie, since the first episode. Yeah, man, it just brought pure nostalgia when I saw that, because I thought we were never going to see that again. Because when the fifth season arrived, it was a whole new opening. It was basically Jack saying like how 50 years has passed, it goes 50 years have passed and I do not age. I don't remember what else he says, but then he says like the line, got to get back to the past, Samurai Jack. But Jack is now hopeless, and the entire world watches. Like the entire world watches that broadcast, including people that Jack has helped. Obviously the Scotsman, Were you gonna say something?
Well, yeah, I was gonna add like Scotsman to Stam O'Brien, and even the teens at this point who are
Yeah,
adults, and the dogs. I don't know if anyone mentioned it, but at least one of the dogs believes that the one with the monocle.
yeah.
Um, yeah, he at this point he has kids of his own, so I guess they're all grandkids. So like it's just crazy. Like yeah, even he was in that last episode.
Well, you also got to remember dogs breed like hell. They breed a lot. So he has a lot of grandkids, including the Junk Good monkey. The Junk Good dude, that guy is so old. Like he looks like 80. He looks even 100. Yeah, but still in good health. He still can jump good. The Spartans, we never mentioned the Spartans in the last segment, but the Spartans that Jack has helped, the blind archers, the woolies, everybody that Jack has came into contact with and has helped, they all see what's happening. So their idea is that because Jack has helped us, we got to help Jack. And they all decided to go and help Jack. They stormed Aku's tower. And at first, they were helpless for a bit until the Scotsman and his daughters came and helped him out because of the Scotsman's Celtic magic. And man, okay, I'm going to let you guys know. The reunion between Jack and the Scotsman is something that I constantly play, not over in my head, but something I just go and watch just because I need a good laugh out of it. It's like Jack sees the Scotsman, he's like, "Oh, you're dead. Oi, just a wee bit." And he goes, "Hey, I gotta introduce you to my only daughters." And he names like, I don't know,
He names all of them.
all his 100 daughters or whatever. And Jack's like, "Well, you got so many." He's like, "Oi, they're my pride and joy." And then he proceeds to say, "Pick one. I'd be proud." He's like, "Oh, no, no. I'm good." He's like, "What? Suddenly you're too good for me, girls." He's like, "No, no, no. I already found someone." "Who?" "Her." And he points to Ashi, who's like Aku possessed. And he just says, "Oh, I don't think she's your type," which is, again, funny. Yeah. But jokes aside, Jack proceeds to help Ashi take control of her inner Aku, or the possession of Aku, however you say it, until Ashi was able to fight back. And now Jack and Ashi realize because she part Aku, she has the same powers of Aku. So what she does was she does the same thing that Aku did in the beginning when he first sent Jack into the future. She does that weird beam thing that comes out of her mouth, and they both jump into the past. And they jump into the part the same time when Aku sends Jack into the future. And it's like the same lines. I guess you could say shots. Yeah, I guess you could say the same shots. It's hard to say shots because like I'm used to physics, like how this camera is right here that we're using on our Zoom calls and stuff like that. Like I'm used to like the same framing shot. So I'm pretty sure Jenny and everybody else, all the other animators say, "Hey, we got to find the shots that we used since the first episode because this is our last episode. We need to make it special." So the fact that they were able to recreate those shots was the exact same lines. I don't remember if they were using Mako's, like they were recycling Mako's voice in there or not. But it was, again, the same lines. But then, or it could have been Greg. Greg is really good at being the Mako impersonator. Anyway, as soon as he says, like, "I'll wait for you, samurai," that's when Jack comes back and it's like, "Back already?" And Jack finally takes down Aku, plunges like he doesn't even like does what his dad did, which is plunge Aku back to the death. No, he uses the sword to finally finish Aku once and for all. And then Jack was wanting to marry Ashi, and they were going to have a wedding. On their wedding, Ashi starts fading. Because remember, in destroying Aku in the past, he changes everything in the future. So it's him meeting the Scotsmen, the Spartans, the thing with the teenagers, the dogs, all that. That doesn't exist anymore. And it's not like nobody was there to save them. Remember, all of that evil that happens in the future was because of Aku. So it's not that like he wasn't there to save them. He saved them from a fate that was going to destroy their lives like thousands of years in the future. Like he saved them from that future's existence. But in doing so, he also prevented Ashi from being born. Because remember, Ashi was born from the fluidity. I'm sorry, that sounds wrong. But she was born from Aku, okay? She has Aku's powers. She was born from Aku, or Aku's mother. You get the point. Because she was created into the future by Aku in the future, because there's no Aku in the future, because Jack kills Aku in the past, there's no Ashi, and she just fades into existence. It's like when you watch Back to the Future, erased from existence. That's pretty much like what happened to Ashi. But eventually, through time, Jack learns to move on and to remember the good times that he's had into the future, the friends he's made, including Ashi. But he can now live in his time peacefully, and that's pretty much how it goes. And man, I mean, what a way to end the series. I don't know if there's for sure talks.
I mean, the ending.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my bad. I was gonna mention about the ending. Just as much as at the beginning of the fifth season, people were crazy about it on social media.
Mm.
The ending was also very controversial. People were saying, "Oh, why did it end like that? Should not have ended like that," or blah blah blah. I'm like, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, Jack wanted to go back to his time. That was the whole plan. I mean, he wanted to stop Aku. That was really his number one goal. And when he did, I mean, he was able to go back. And for that reason, I mean, that was the point, was for him to basically return back to his time. And of course, he did. Thankfully, he didn't forget everybody that he met in the future. But I mean, that's just how it is. And so I still understand why people were still upset by it, or some people were. But like, I mean, that was always the ending in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and but like I said earlier, he saved everybody from a future that doesn't have to exist anymore, you know? And I know there was a video game that was of the final season. So that was also the other time that was the only time that Greg Baldwin was able to play Aku again. As far as I can tell you, there's no pushes to any other Samurai Jack stuff. I know back then people thought, well, I don't even know if it was an official talk or not. There could have been a talk of a movie, a live action movie. I would say at that point, the time between the fourth and the final season, so that 13 year gap, it would have been a big no. And the reason being is because Dragon Ball Evolution is a good example of that. I mean, that movie, when that movie came out, fans of Dragon Ball hated it, mostly because of like who they casted as Goku, how the Kamehameha was used, the location of the movie, obviously the CGI that was also ineffective. Everybody hated that movie. So at that point, I would say it would have been a bad idea. You would have gotten, I don't know, Tom Cruise to play Samurai Jack, and you're going to tick everybody off. And obviously, they would have messed up Aku. Was the bad CGI back then? They didn't let the CGI render enough to actually like give us a good like VFX image. Because like if you ever watched like action movies back then, like good action movies, like Spider-Man 2, War of the Worlds, they took their time. They literally took their time. They're like, I know the fans are wanting to see this movie, but we gotta let it time to render out and play out and see how it goes. We want to wait for this final product to actually be good. So no talks of a movie anymore, thankfully. I mean, honestly, if I was the fan cast, everybody would say Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves would obviously look the part. But nah, I think just leave it as it is, guys. It's a good series. Because I'm afraid they're gonna mess it up. Because like I said, it's hard to like because he saw the problem with M. Night Shyamalan when he did The Last Airbender, trying to fit a whole season into a 2 hour movie. Not even 2 hours. I think it was like 90 minutes. Still, like even if you try to make a 3 hour long movie, you're still gonna have a hard time trying to fit like a lot of episodes. And not only that, they had to work cohesively. You get what I mean? The purpose of like a movie is how a character gets from point A to point B, like the Odyssey. But yes, there are trials within there, but you're talking about multiple episodes for like a 2-3 hour movie if you dare do that. There's so many trials, and other that you have to look at like, okay, maybe what shouldn't we put in there and what should we put in there that's important. But it's all of importance. That's the other thing. The show has so many importance. So as I said, don't try to live action it. Or at least don't try to make it a live action movie. Actually, no, don't even live action. Don't even remake the series. Let's also put it like that. Because I mean, like going back to again The Last Airbender, obviously they share more than just Greg Bowen and Mako. There's a lot of similarities because remember when Netflix was creating the series, they spent about $10 million for the entire first season. And that's, I think, the most that Netflix ever had to spend on a show because of all the VFX, because of locations they had to shoot. And it's different too, because this is a movie or a series that takes place in the future. And where would you even start? You know, like you could start from how we started, which was about, Jack's father first defeating Aku and then Jack going into the future or Jack training and stuff like that. But I'm going back right now and I'll end with this. It takes me back to an interview with Quentin Tarantino. And also, I think that's funny because remember, Phil Lamar came out in Pulp Fiction. He played the kid that John Travolta accidentally shot. To me, one of the most memorable scenes of the entire movie. But it goes back to something that Quentin Tarantino said. Quentin Tarantino said that he doesn't like to watch remakes because he's seen it happen before. He doesn't want to see it happen again. So that's why I was a bit iffy the first time I ever saw The Last Airbender, the Netflix remake, because technically we've seen it before. No matter how many times you try to change like everything within the plot or add new details within the plot, we've seen it before. So I think this is why I'm so passionate to say like never remake it. It just leave it as is, guys, because I know Hollywood and so many studios are running out of ideas. And I don't think they're truly running out of ideas. I think they don't, because this was an idea. You get what I mean? This was an original idea or something that inspired them. I don't think these studios are just going into sitting in the room trying to figure out how to create another show. Because if I'm gonna be fully honest with you guys, I stopped watching Cartoon Network when the show first went on break because I wasn't a huge fan of all the other shows that were coming at that. Billy and Mandy, obviously, I love that show. Ed, Ed, and Eddie, as we mentioned, Tom and Jerry. But no, I mean, like some of the other shows that were coming out within that 12, 13 year hiatus, I wasn't really watching. Especially like when we got into middle school and high school. Cartoon Network wasn't even Cartoon Network anymore. They were doing like reality shows and game shows, and I'm like, that's not what I grew. That's not what my childhood was. I know I rambled on so much, but Jesus, have you got any like final thoughts before we end it off?
I mean, I want to say, well, I can't really say this, but I can. This is just my opinion. I know people get upset about it. The new shows that they made during the time that we had just gotten off to college and graduated from high school, or at least they were starting as we were in high school. They're good shows. I think none of them actually lit a candle or even close to the peak that we had growing up. And this show was essentially the last great show from that network. I mean, we had to wait 10 years or so or something just for a conclusion, but it was just the fact is that like you said, it's the magnum opus for Gendy and possibly the magnum opus of the network itself. I mean, yeah, there's never going to be another show like this. And it's already, I know people will say, actually, if you've heard of it, Gendy started making another one called Primal, and I think it's on its second or third season now. But yeah, I mean that's probably as close as it's gonna get to where it's more the substance is actually more of what we're seeing rather than actually like through voice. Because I mean his characters don't actually speak all that much in that show like at all. You're only seeing it through the rest of the film, like the foreground and background. To have a show like that years later, there hasn't been any cartoon show where substance is not about dialogue, but it's what you're being shown, what the actions that you're seeing, and that's what Jack is. Jack doesn't have to speak for him to show that that's what he means to all these people that he helped throughout the show. So it's just like I said, it's just that power of storytelling is just amazing. Like I don't think there's never going to be another cartoon like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's literally all we have for today's episode. Like I said, this was our childhood. I mean, we got the whole stack right here in my hands. He has the whole stack too. Literally, like all 5 seasons of this show. This is my childhood, and something obviously in my early 20s. And I think it's interesting how it ages with the people who've watched it. So obviously, yes, the first 4 seasons are cartoony and it's just tons of fun. And then the final season, as we age, it became more serious. So I'm not gonna say I'm just gonna say it. There's no other show that's literally knew its audience. Like it knew its audience. When he made the 5th season, he knew like all the ones that seen the first 4 seasons were kids. He knew like pretty much everybody was either like 18, 19, 20, 21 years old when the final season came out. I mean, I think I was like 20, almost 21 when the final season came out. But yeah, I could talk forever, but I just don't want to take too much time. But I just want to say thank you guys for coming out today's episode. I think Jesus and I will be. I mean, I'll still always be here for the rest of the season. But as for Jesus and I, as far as I can tell you, we won't be back together until the Indiana Jones episode, which, as I said, will be our final episode. And guess what? I finally watched it. So yes, you're gonna hear so many thoughts about this because I have a lot of thoughts about the recent Indiana Jones movie.
Oh boy, I can't wait for that one.
The unfortunate part for me is that I have to rewatch it to get prepared for the episode. But anyway, you guys have a nice night, day, morning, whenever you're listening to this. Yeah, take care. Love you all. God bless.